Hey guys, GAIYAS back at it again with more Gaia gear. This time, we are jumping in and dissecting episode 23 of the radio drama. Things are getting crazy, and even more is about to go down. After this video, we will have only 3 episodes left of the entire series. So, as a short recap of episode 22, Kellen and Lila are both dead. The heroes mourn the loss of Kellen, who has spent the entire story as somewhat of an older brother to the entire team. Lila's hot-headed attitude finally got the best of her, and she was cut to pieces by the Gaia gear. Urian went back on the promise he'd made to Krishna, saying he wouldn't use the Brahm Texter's Psychomu. Ultimately, he uses it after Lila is killed. The team leaves Nouveau Paris with a new course to stop the now rogue Manhunter forces located in Bavaria, where Everly is being held captive by Captain Dargle. Throughout all of this, Joe has gone AWOL, trying to rescue Krishna only to be captured by Urian, and finally, a familiar face has returned from the dead, Zhang Wenfu from episode 6, who has returned with a few new upgrades. He's a cyber new type now, and he's now piloting the Manhunter's ultimate man-machine weapon, the colossal Gids Geese. Now, with that whole slew of things out of the way, let's continue our journey. Episode 23, titled Zhang Wenfu's Challenge. All images and characters are owned by the respective companies and creators. The episode opens up with Urian. He walks into Krishna's quarters and reveals to her their new prisoner, that being Joe. Urian laughs, as it seems to be quite the heartfelt reunion between the two. Krishna asks what Joe is doing here, and Urian says that he came all this way in a busted Dochati to come and save her. Joe is happy to see her, but Krishna can't help but say that what he did was incredibly reckless. Urian then sees that the two of them have some catching up to do, and he leaves them alone for the time being. After he leaves, Krishna asks him if he's okay. Was he hurt or anything? But Joe's first response is one of confusion. Why is she not locked in a cell? She's sitting peacefully in Urian's personal quarters. He thought she was their prisoner, but from the way she looks, she's absolutely fine. Joe asks the question if she and Urian slept together. Krishna is apprehensive, and Joe demands to know the truth. She finally admits it, but the truth is that Urian forced himself onto her. But Joe doesn't understand. He demands to know the reasons why. Why would she betray Metatron, betray her friends, betray him, their cause? But Krishna's response catches Joe off guard. She slaps him across the face. As he reels from the wound, he asks her one more time, why? However, she's remaining entirely silent. Joe now realizes that what Urian said was true then. She's his now. Her remaining quiet, Joe reveals the truth to her. Kellen is dead. Urian killed him. Krishna in disbelief, Urian re-enters the room once again, saying that he won't be happy if something bad happens to his girl. Krishna tries to stop him, but Urian orders his guards to take Joe away. His time with her is up. His guards drag him out of the room, calling Krishna's name as he tries to resist the guards who have him in restraints. When he's taken out of the room, Urian laments that whether it's Avarachi or someone else, looks like all of Metatron seem to lack any form of delicacy. Krishna tells him that he's one to talk, and demands to know if it's true. Did he kill Kellen, the pilot of the Zoran Soul? Urian says that he remembers the name vaguely, but can't help remember each and every man-machine pilot he's ever killed. This leaves Krishna to exclaim that Kellen was one of her closest friends. The two worked together for over 2 years. Urian says, so what? He's lost people too, like Lila, who attended pilot school with him as a cadet. She was killed too, but does he hate every Metatron pilot for her death? No, they're at war. These losses are just the cost of it all. The unlucky perish, and it's simply that. Krishna asks if he really believes that, and Urian says yes. He's not some kind of cheap sentimentalist like those fighting for Metatron. Krishna finally gets it now. She asks what will happen to Joe now. Urian says that he'll keep him prisoner, but he won't be receiving any special treatment like she does. Krishna asks if they're going to torture him, and Urian laments that that part is out of his control. Before she can ask why, Urian asks her another question. Will she come with him to Bavaria? Urian says that Dargle has reassigned the Hong Kong Manhunter Division to the task of eliminating the remaining forces of Metatron. Urian himself reveals that he's been reassigned to Bavaria after the losses he sustained during their last battle. It's Zhang's job to finish the fight now. He then tells her that this is the chance he's been waiting for, the chance to seize the world as he dreams of. He won't miss this chance to make that dream a reality. He tells her that soon she will understand what he means by this after this is over. Krishna asks what he's going to do, and the scene cuts over to Zhang's squadron and the Metatron forces led by Avarachi, down on the ground, One of the Gids Geese's beam rifle shots singes the shoulder of Messer's unit. The suit is moving surprisingly fast for being so large. The group finally has the data from their onboard learning computers finalized on the machine and its capabilities. Navarachi orders them to remain at his side. The two punks are far too out in front, and they're without any real cover to protect them. He orders them to fall back, but not before another one of the Gids Geese's beam rifle shots tries to strafe the Gaia gear from its exposed flank, causing Navarachi to withdraw. As he retreats, Navarachi can sense the pressure emanating from the other pilot. It's hate-fueled, but a presence that's full of spite and vengeance, something that feels familiar, but not like what he's experienced in the past when it comes to Urien or Dargle. As he continues to focus on it, he can now remember the sensation. It's him, Zhang Wenfu, the ace pilot from back in Hong Kong, the one with the purple Gussa. Seems he managed to survive. Navarachi then notices that the Gids Geese units are operating in a very tightly coordinated formation. Meanwhile, Zhang, he orders two of his squad mates, named Li and Law, to switch formation tactics. As they do so, Zhang can't help but point out that Navarachi is not going to be able to use his funnels with the way that he's fighting right now. He's too focused on protecting his allies. He's not going to see what surprises that Zhang has up his sleeves. Zhang then says that in a dogfight, experience is everything. That whatever happens, he's not going to lose this time to the Gaia gear. The Gids Geese, surprisingly, then deploys its own funnels, unleashing a storm of beam attacks that hack through the forest like a fine scalpel, cutting trees to pieces and devastating the battlefield as they pelt Navarachi's squad with numerous attacks from all directions. Zhang then orders Li and Law to go after Rei's unit, while he himself will go after the Gaia gear. But before he can, something strikes one of the Gids Geeses, temporarily disabling the unit's M barrier. A lightning bolt. It's beginning to rain, and a major storm is forming over the valley. Zhang becomes frustrated. They won't be able to tangle with the Metatron man-machines with the winds and the storm interfering with their systems. Zhang takes note that the Metatron guys are having a tough time as well, that the squad Navarachi is commanding are nothing but amateurs, but that next time, he will return to finish the fight. It's only a matter of time before he falls. We then cut to Navarachi, and it seems the Gids Geese units are starting to withdraw. Navarachi orders Messer not to pursue, with Messer asking, "What about Joe?" And Navarachi laments that they can't do anything now that the Manhunters have left them. If they pursue them, they'd be instantly fired upon. They can't look for Joe in this weather. They have no other choice but to retreat. The group begrudgingly accepts, and the team is unfortunately left to return to the carrier empty-handed, with them not knowing that Joe has been captured. Now, pause. Now that this fight is over with, I think it's a good time to introduce our newest man-machine, that being the Gids Geese. Now, from its bulky design, you'd think that a suit like this would be our final boss unit. However, this story doesn't actually treat it like that. Despite its powers, Urien's Brahm texture will be the machine to fight the Gaia gear in the closing battles. Despite that, the Gids Geese is the last of the original designs that will appear in this story. As the last suit revealed in the story, I mentioned before in one of my previous videos that the Gids Geese is the most terrifying machine that this story introduces, and probably the most powerful when it comes to weapons and features. From this line art, from the audio, you can tell that this machine is a powerhouse of a unit. It has funnels, is bulky but very fast, yet you'd think that this suit would end up filling the role in the story of something to that of the Sazabi, right? But no, this man-machine is far more terrifying of a concept than a descendant of the Sazabi, a design that speaks to the level of absolute disgust that the Manhunters exude. You see, the Gids Geese isn't a descendant of Sazabi like the Zoran Soul or Penelope like the Brahm texture. Oh no. The Gids Geese is a machine whose design and technology are derived from a machine with a far more heinous reputation. The Gids Geese is a mass-produced refinement and distant descendant of the O. Yes, the O, that very same one used by Paptimus Shirako. After being thought lost to time, and after 116 years of being held in a top-secret Federation research and storage facility, for clues on that, please read Gundam Walpurgis, the schematics for the original PMX-003 have resurfaced into the Universal Century once more. With it, one of the deadliest and most dangerous mobile weapons ever conceived by man has returned to wreak havoc on the Earth sphere once more. Yes, this man-machine is no doubt the demon spawn of the O, the vengeful ghost of Paptimus Shirako's intellect, with the product of that same intellect being now used to further the goals of men like Bijan Dargle and his mission to create a new world order with a level of tyranny that goes beyond what Shirako could have even imagined was possible. This man-machine is disgustingly overpowered, and later on towards the end, you'll see more reasons why. This thing has so much going on, it's hard to even call this thing a man-machine, or like an abomination. It has funnels, it has an M-barrier, but that's not all. But I'm not going to spoil the big technological surprise, so I'm going to hold off a little bit until a bit later and reveal what it is that makes this guy so special, as it has one special feature that hasn't ever been seen before in a Gundam story, one that makes this thing all the more unstoppable, and it is a feature that I myself have managed to discover while doing my research into this unit. If you do a little bit of research, you'll find the Gids Geese's own Gundam wiki page, and I myself am actually the author of that page. There are a lot of confusing aspects about the suit when you read that bio, so I believe that the best way of explaining this machine will have to be in man-machine profiles. As with man-machine profiles, I'll be able to create a better understanding of what it is this machine can do, as per the discoveries that I had made while analyzing the Gids Geese and its capabilities. Now, as for that little preamble is over, we cut back to a short while later, and it seems the rain has stopped. It seems Urien has a scheme of his own brewing. Surprisingly, for some reason, he's letting Joe go. Joe asks why he's doing this, and Urien says that Krishna asked him to, that he's doing it as a courtesy to her. It seems she didn't want him to remain with them. Urien mockingly saying that it seems she's done looking at his miserable face now. Joe curses Urien, and the man mockingly laments that being let go by one's enemy out of pity may come off as a dishonor, but that it's a far better outcome than being held as a prisoner. Urien then says that if he were Joe right now, he'd start running, and now, and to remember that next time, he better bring a better man-machine to face him than some busted-up Dochati. Urien reveals that he let his mechanics fix Joe's unit so that it could fly. He says the mechanics fixed it so that he'll be able to make it back. However, they did destroy and dismantle its own weapons, so if he goes back to Metatron with it, it still wouldn't be of any use to them as a fighting machine. Damn, Urien, that's a stone-cold move right there. Rather than just destroying an enemy's unit, you let them have it back. But it's completely useless now thanks to you purposely sabotaging it. That's cruel. Jeez. He asks what Joe will do now, and he warns him if he tries to stick around, he's never going to see Krishna ever again. Joe says he'll get his revenge, and runs off, taking the Dochati and leaving Urien to mock the young man as he runs away. It is here that Zhang makes his presence known, and asks why Urien is letting him escape. Urien says that he'll tell Metatron about Krishna's betrayal, and hopefully it should weaken their morale enough for them to be taken out easier. This leaves Zhang to call his tactic underhanded, but in all reality, Zhang doesn't really care. The only one he wants to kill is Avarachi, and it will be he himself alone who will be the one to do it. Urien tells Zhang that he can do as he wishes, and tells him that he'll be departing soon. He's going to Bavaria now with Krishna. When Zhang asks why, that he thought Urien's sights were on Avarachi, Urien says that if Zhang fails, then Avarachi will face him in Bavaria. But to Urien, it doesn't matter right now that he's after something else right now, something bigger. This leaves Zhang to preemptively apologize for ruining Urien's chances at concluding his rivalry. That because of this, he won't really get the chance that he's always wanted when it comes to killing Avarachi. This is his kill now. But Urien himself knows that the two of them, that being himself and Zhang, are on equal footing in their own way. We then cut to Michael and the others on the Air Force carrier. It seems a heat source is approaching from behind. It's Joe. Avarachi and the others are happy to see that he's made it. Now, knowing it's not the enemy, Roger orders the alarms to be deactivated, but Jack makes note of his fears. The Dochati had disappeared for an entire night. Their own forces went to retrieve it, but instead found the manhunters waiting. There's a possibility that his unit might have been captured, and the enemy is using it as a decoy. Roger orders them to remain on alert, and orders the carrier to prepare its weapons. As they do, the Dochati sends them a signal. It's Joe's personal ID code. With them being relieved that it's actually him, the captain orders that the hangar doors open and retrieve the busted unit. The Dochati lands. Joe leaps out of the cockpit. Messer and the others applaud his safe return. Ray asks what happened, but at first he's silent. After an uncomfortable amount of time, he says a single phrase that turns the entire atmosphere of the hangar bay to one of dread. Krishna is now Urien's woman. She's betrayed Metatron. The group is in shock. They all ask how he knows this. Did he actually find her? Joe says yes, but she's Afarachi rushes into the room. Joe yells from the top of his lungs at the very sight of him. Why? Why would she do this? Why would she choose him? Choose Urien? But before an answer can be given, Madra arrives and smacks Joe across the face. He doesn't have the slightest clue of what his stunt has cost them. Because of his selfish decisions, he put the entirety of the ship's crew, their location, and overall lives at risk. All because he couldn't show the least bit of emotional restraint. He orders him to remain in his quarters. He'll be dealt with later. Joe apologizes, and the captain ultimately laments that he's just glad he survived. They all thought his man-machine was shot down by the Gids Geese squadron. He orders 2 of the crew members to take him to his confinement, and Joe silently marches with them. Messer then says he doesn't believe it. Whatever's happened to Krishna is obviously a lie. Afarachi asks if they think it's true, and Ray says no, but there's no possible way that Krishna has betrayed them. Whatever is happening over with Urien is far more complex than they realize. With this thought of Krishna's supposed betrayal of Metatron all fresh in their minds, the scene finally comes to an end. We cut to a while later, and Joe is locked in his quarters, and strangely, Messer knocks on his door, asking if he can enter. When the door opens, Messer comes in with some stolen rations. Seems Joe needs some cheering up, so Messer has gone ahead and procured something for him to eat. Joe says it's against the rules, but Messer says to chill. He just wants to chat. The guy takes a seat and asks how he's faring with the makeshift cell he's been put in. Joe says it isn't great, and Messer finds himself agreeing with him. His crew quarters isn't exactly a spacious room. The 2 share a moment of silence, and Messer asks him about what happened, that he himself has known Krishna for a long portion of his life. The girl is never the kind to betray her friends, and he asks Joe, maybe you should trust her. Maybe she has something up her sleeve. But Joe can't help but recall the things he heard her say to him. She actually let Urien sleep with her. Messer asks if this is why Joe hates Krishna, and this leaves Joe to finally break once again. Why? Why would she do something like that and betray those she's been so close with? Messer then says that relationships are something that can't be looked at from an outside perspective. To do so is to invite misunderstanding. Even Krishna may not know how things have ended up to be like this. Joe asks if something so strange as what has happened with the 2 of them can really happen. Can a person like Krishna and a person like Urien really get together? And Messer says that these things often do happen. The reasons can be found out afterwards. But now, Urien has Krishna in the palm of his hand. Joe then says that what he's saying sounds too harsh, but the young man says that the way that Joe sees it is in a way that he ignores the greater picture. His own emotions are making the reality of the situation more difficult to grasp. Messer then brings up a hypothetical. What if Krishna returned? Could he be capable of accepting her and be able to trust her as he used to? Joe doesn't understand though, but Messer says that if he can't even do the basic thing of doing that, he will never grow to become worthy of being a person who could be fallen in love with. He then asks him to finish his food, get some rest. Once he's calmed down, he should go and apologize to the others for his behavior. Do that, and they'll let him out sooner rather than later. Before Joe can say another word though, Messer has left him to contemplate his newfound choices. Interesting. We then cut to the bridge. The team goes over their new opponents. It seems that the forces of the Hong Kong Manhunter Division, led by Zhang, have come all the way to Europe to aid in Dargle's coup. Their mission is to eliminate them. They have to ward off these dangerous new threats somehow. Jack then asks about the Gids Geese. What kind of man-machine are they dealing with? Afarachi then pulls up the recorded camera footage file of the battle that the Gaia gear managed to obtain. The machine itself isn't something Afarachi seemingly finds incredibly dangerous. Keyword, seemingly. The thing that freaks him out is the strange cohesive tactics that Zhang uses with his wingmen, and he finds that to be the most threatening thing about them. It's almost like the Gids Geese pilots are in total sync with one another. Jack then says that the Hong Kong Manhunter pilots are believed to have the strongest bonds between their squad mates, stronger than brothers. There's something more along the lines of parents with their children. Jack himself can just picture how much of an issue that poses to beating them. Madra then says that they don't have the adequate forces needed to deal with them though. Their carrier only possesses a small handful of working man-machines they can utilize. This leaves Jack to tell him to stop being a pessimist, and that they have Afarachi with them. He's Char's heir. He knows that the young man can do something. Madra says it's true they have him, however he still has his fears. Miranda then cuts in and says that the Gids Geese team and its tactics appear to be centered around a single unit, the lead unit used by Zhang. They cut off the head of the serpent, then the rest of the team will collapse along with him. Afarachi then thinks on it. He can distinctly remember the sensation he felt when he was fighting him. The psychic presence, hate and sheer spite towards him himself. But his skill was something he noticed was much higher than that of Urian's. Perhaps this is the powers of a veteran pilot at work. Nonetheless, the man resonates a vast amount of emotion from his being. It's odd. Before he can ponder about it further, though, the warning sirens begin to blare. Missiles. Lots of them. They're coming in from the forest below. Madra orders evasive action, with one of the missile rounds exploding as it strikes the emergency flares. Man machines. They've been ambushed. The Gids Geese squadron has emerged. 7 man machines in total. The 4 light armor Gids Geese units, and 2 of Urian's former Bromtexter units to back them up, with Zhang's commander Gids Geese leading the formation. Afarachi tells the captain to hold the line. He's going to launch and fend them off. Madra orders the carrier to turn around, and orders the anti-air cannons to fire. They need to cover the man machines as they launch off the catapults. As the chaos begins to erupt, Miranda takes note that they are still down a pilot, and the captain then realizes it too. They need to protect the ship. They have to release Joe. He's the only veteran pilot besides Afarachi. The captain says that they can give him one of the GAIYAS they've managed to repair, since his Dochati has been disabled. The rear hangar doors open. The Gaia gear is in its fighter mode, ready to launch. Afarachi gives the signal, and he's heading out right now. With a jolt from the carrier's catapult, the Gaia gear launches into the air. Rei is next. Her Dochati is set. She herself launches from the carrier's side hatch release arm. The grip's letting go as she reaches top speed. Joe makes his way into the hangar along with Messer. He's been given the last GAIYAS, with Messer saying that it's their turn to do their best and protect the ship. If Krishna ever escapes, she won't have anywhere to come back to if they fail. Before Joe can tell him how crazy he sounds, Messer reiterates what he said. Trust her. If he does care about her, and I mean if he really does care about her, then he needs to be able to see that she can look after herself when the times are dire. Joe agrees and says thank you. With the 2 of them getting into their man machines, the last 2 man machines on board the carrier launch into the air to face the Gids Geese squadron. The battle erupts into a frenzy of beam shots and missiles. The Gids Geese units trying to strike down the Gaia gear, with the unit's M barrier doing well to soak up the beam damage fired on by the Gaia gear. With Messer and the Zoran Soul and the GAIYAS entering the fight, Afarachi orders Rei to draw their fire. They need to defend the carrier from their onslaught. Rei complies and begins to open fire in the air, drawing one of the Bromtexter units away from them. Afarachi can hear it, a static voice over the comms. It's Zhang. He asks if Afarachi can hear him. Afarachi asks if it's indeed him, the ace pilot from Hong Kong, and Zhang says yes. After their fight, where his suit was destroyed, he now is demanding vengeance. He demands Afarachi face him. One-on-one. Afarachi asks why. Zhang says if he doesn't have the courage, then that's fine. Regardless, he's going to enjoy taking him down. Afarachi realizes it. This is their chance. If he accepts this challenge, he'll be able to protect the carrier and draw Zhang into an ambush. With this opportunity, Afarachi accepts Zhang's challenge. Zhang says he knew he would. He is the Red Comet after all. The fight erupts, with beams firing and sabers swinging, missiles firing and explosions blasting all throughout the forest. The Gaia gear giving chase to the Gids Geese as the 2 chase each other through the woods. Back with Madra and the others, they can see that the Gaia gear has drawn the lead machine away. The captain tries to figure out what he's planning, and Michael points out that the GAIYAS and Zoran Soul are making their way out, and Madra orders the 2 of them to stay out and defend the carrier while Rei and Afarachi deal with the forward assault. Back in the woods, the Gids Geese discards its beam rifle, Zhang slyly telling Afarachi to ditch his weapon as well. If they're gonna fight, then it's gonna be with sabers. He flaunts his saber blade, the edge setting the forest ablaze with a single hand gesture. Afarachi is taken aback as the man rushes him from the front, his Gids Geese's scattering beam cannon firing a burst of plasma from the unit's chest. Gaia gear just able to avoid the shot, with the energy searing his armor. With a rapid drawing of his saber, the blades clash, with Zhang pointing out that Afarachi seems to have improved since their last fight, with Afarachi telling him not to underestimate him. He's not in Hong Kong anymore. With the 2 units blasting off into the woods, the Gaia gear fires a burst from its Vulcans as the 2 units charge off. Back with Joe, he asks the Air Force carrier to pull pull out of the battle. They've been here too long, and the 4 Gids Geese are making things difficult for the others. Madra tells Joe that they're counting on him, and the ship begins to make its retreat. Joe coordinates with Messer and Ray. They have to hold off the enemy. The two agree, and they begin to engage in close combat with the 4 man-machine escorts. As Messer races in with the Zoran Soul, he unleashes a burst of beam fire into one of the Bromtexters. The burst at point-blank range, causing the entire unit to explode into the air. The head of the machine blowing off its shoulders as the force from the blast of the cockpit rips the machine to shreds. As Messer stands victorious, Ray tells him to watch out. Another one is coming. One of the Gids Geese light armors fires a blast from its missile launcher, the explosion sending Messer hurtling into the ground, and immediately after, it blasts past Messer at top speed. It's broken past them. One of the Gids Geese is making a beeline for the Air Force carrier. Joe tells them that he can catch it in time, but as he tries to fire at it, the Gids Geese fires a burst from its rifle, the beam rifle tearing a hole across the side of the carrier as it strafes the entire ship. Luckily, the damage it inflicted wasn't catastrophic. Joe tries to hit him with his own weapons, but the GAIYAS runs out of ammo as he tries. With no other options, Joe tries to ram the Gids Geese as it bolts around from another passing attack. He has to guard this ship. Krishna needs a place to come back to. Without this ship, she'll be lost forever. He smashes his GAIYAS into the Gids Geese. He grabs it by the waist from the front. He's not going to let them get their ship. The Gids Geese pilot tries to hit him with the unit's Vulcans and manages to tear the unit's head from its shoulders with a hailstorm of machine gun fire. But as Joe wrestles with this beast of a machine, he realizes without any weapons to combat him, the only thing he can do is hold this thing down. How is he going to destroy this thing? However, he then realizes he's holding him in place right in front of the carrier. Without a second thought of hesitation, Joe asks Madra to open fire. This is their only chance to destroy this thing. This suit is too strong, and if it breaks free, their entire ship is doomed. Madra tries to fight him on it, but Joe says to just do it. The anti-air cannons erupt. The Gids Geese's reactor catches fire as shrapnel from the point-blank shots tear past the unit's M barrier. Gids Geese in retaliation driving a beam saber into Joe's GAIYAS' back as it wrestles him in front of the gun barrels that rip the Gids Geese to shreds. He has to save her. He has to get her back. He has to save Krishna. The two units fall into the forest. GAIYAS disappearing into the flames. It drags the flaming wreckage of the Gids Geese with it. Back with Afferanchi, the Gaia gear is still fighting with the leader Gids Geese. But wait, it's quiet. Afferanchi can sense it, all silent, as if the presences he's been feeling have suddenly ceased to exist. Then Ray's voice cuts in over the comms. Joe's dead. Afferanchi is frozen. He's dead. He screams from the top of his lungs, and with that scream, the Gaia Gear's Psychomu erupts to life with a bolt of psychic energy. The Gaia Gear's funnels detaching from the unit's back as they all begin to unleash a storm of beam attacks that pelt the Gids Geese. The unit's powerful M barrier unable to even shrug off the amount of shots being fired at it, nor the sheer power being unleashed onto it. Zhang is forced to retreat. Some of his squad mates are gone. He's alone out here, with no backup, and Afferanchi has gone ahead and used his funnels to absolutely pummel his suit with minor damage. He realizes that this fight is over, but their duel is far from complete. With that notion, the Gids Geese blasts off into the air, leaving Afferanchi and his friends to turn and mourn the loss of Joe. Alrighty, and that brings episode 23 to an end. Side note, this episode somehow took the longest time to write the script for. I forgot the reason why, probably because at the time I was writing it, I was working on the rest of Man Machine Profiles. But anyways, let's give a little nod to Joe for being the bestest guy in the end, and managing to redeem himself from sheer cringe from his simpery. Yeah, he's a bit too impetuous, but his sacrifice at the end came as a real surprise when I re-listened to it again. Now, this works well for my next topic actually, and that is a nice little mini dissection of Joe's slang as a character. You see, upon first glance, you might think that Joe is a character who largely follows the same path as to that of someone like Kat's Kobayashi or Hathaway Noah from Char's Counterattack. And yes, he does have those same attributes, but the outcome for him is completely different, one that is a perfect opposite fate compared to those two. You see, characters like Joe largely never have the best fates in Gundam stories, Joe himself included. Kat's and Zeta Gundam was constantly manipulated and ended up paying the price for his own overconfidence. Hathaway, after Quest's death, spent his whole life trying to find some way to take revenge on the world that took her away from him, but ultimately was brought down further by his own inability to forgive himself for something that was out of his control, leading to his capture and subsequent execution for improperly trying to take on the mantle of being Char's successor. Where Katz was manipulated by Sarah because he was too infatuated with her and was too gullible to see the truth about her, that she was a liar and she was trying to use him, and with Hathaway, he was also infatuated with Quest, but he felt as if he could have prevented her betrayal of them, only for her to die, him to killing Chan, only not to realize that Quest saw a moment of clarity at the end of her sacrifice, only for Hathaway not to realize that and become enraged over the sheer fact that she was dead, which in turn spiraled into his pursuit to topple the government. But for Joe, it's the one time in a Gundam story where a character who follows that same character outline of the young kid who falls way too hard into his crushes and pays the price, but the outcome of Joe's character is the exact opposite of those two. Joe realized that he loved Krishna, tried to save her, realized that the situation was much more complex than just a kidnapped princess in a tower situation, and after being humiliated by his rival, rather than spiraling into despair and going against everyone around him, he listens to his friends. He listened to Messer of all people, and decided to do the right thing in the end, and sacrificed himself for the slimmest chance for Krishna to be able to not only survive, but have the possibility to return home to the others. He saved every member of the crew with what he did, just for Krishna to have a chance to come home. That's not something a character like Hathaway or Katz would do. A character like them would have lashed out at being made a fool by Urien and wouldn't have listened to Messer, the person who's now realizing that they themselves are a bad person and violated someone out of spite for their own self. Joe is not one of these characters, but he's also very much like them. For lack of a better term, Joe is no simp. That there is a person who genuinely loves Krishna. In this one moment, Joe actually came to see clarity, and it actually came from Messer of all people. Messer, the guy who sent all of this spiraling into motion, and when Joe got that moment of clarity, he knew exactly what to do, and laid his life on the line and sacrificed himself, just so that Krishna could have the slightest chance of making it back safely and to a place where she could be safe. That is badass. You can see why I like the GAIYAS as a man machine. Now that this is over, this actually brings an end to an arc within the radio drama. However, it doesn't conclude the entire final battle. Regardless, this is one of the highlights of the story I do love about Gaia Gear. As the first time I ever listened to it, this arc really just flew by. But man, re-listening to it, this was a trip. And it's right up there with some of my favorite moments in the story. My favorite two parts in Gaia Gear still remain: the first time Afaranchi gets into the Gaia Gear, and the second one being that he learns he's a clone made to correct Char Aznable's flaws. This part is definitely in my top 5. Because we've had such a good run with these characters, I'm gonna tie Kellen and Joe together as the two bestest bros in Gaia Gear, with Kellen sacrificing himself to save Joe, and Joe taking that lesson and sacrificing himself to save the rest of our heroes. Absolutely awesome. Anyways, that'll be the end of this video. Tune in next time where I go into episode 24 and the second last part of my Gaia Gear plot breakdown series. And yes, the final 2 episodes, plus the epilogue of the radio drama, will be combined into a single episode. 'Cause jeez, this series finale is going to be enormous. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on notification bell to make sure you're caught up with the story. And this is GAIYAS, signing off. Bye!